In our top story this hour, the Democratic Alliance's federal executive will urgently convene a meeting to assess the impact of Herman Mashaba's decision to resign as the mayor of Johannesburg and a member of the party.
Mashaba announced his resignation this morning and will be leaving office on the 27th of November. This follows the election of Helen Zille as the party's Federal Council chairperson yesterday.
Mashaba had previously indicated that he would call it quits should what he called the right-wing aligned Democratic Alliance faction win.
I will no longer serve as a Democratic Alliance councillor, and therefore I'm required to resign as Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, effective on the same date. I've given this decision considerable thought, and I've been tortured by the circumstances that have had to lead me to this moment. It is not in my nature to quit anything in life. I succeeded under the darkest days of our country's history when I was told that I could not be a businessman. However, I cannot be a willing participant in good conscience in a process that is placing the narrow internal interest of a political party ahead of the needs of the 5 million residents of our city, of the City of Johannesburg. The events of the past few months, and particularly this weekend, have required me to choose between my party and my country. I spent the past 3 years in governing, working tirelessly to rise above party politics in an attempt to unite a broad coalition. The events of this past weekends have left me at crossroads where I can no longer ignore the internal dynamics in the DA and the continued attempts to undermine my pro-poor agenda in the City of Johannesburg. I'm now in a position where I'm forced to choose between my party and my country. Ladies and gentlemen, as a patriot, I will always choose my country first.
Well, the party leader of the DA, Musi Maimane, says that he respects the decision taken by Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba to resign from his position in the party.
Maimane said Mashaba made Johannesburg a better place than it was under the ANC.
The work must continue. The party itself will take consideration of the announcement today by Mayor Mashaba. That will then serve before a federal executive to which considerations need to be made. I want to categorically state, certainly as a job that I have put as leader of the DA, have supported and stood firm behind the coalition arrangements here in Johannesburg. Have always maintained that even as tough as it is, we never got an outright majority, and it became important that we work with parties so that we can advance that dream of building an inclusive city, but also removing the ANC. None of us joined politics to save the ANC or a faction of the ANC. We joined politics because we believed fundamentally we could bring change, address historical injustices, and ultimately work hard to create an economy that is inclusive for all South Africans.
The EFF has also reacted to Herman Mashaba's resignation.
In a statement, the party described Mashaba as humble, consultative, and always willing to concede to superior logic.
Earlier, we spoke to the EFF's national spokesperson, Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi.
Herman Mashaba was the one that understood and took with some sense of humility the responsibility of leading a coalition government. He had an appreciation that the DA did not win with an outright majority. So he was never arrogant, and that opened him up to genuine conversations about the circumstances and the conditions that the people in the city were faced with. That's why we were able to have important gains that could not have even been realized under the ANC in 24 years. Insourcing of cleaning staff, insourcing of security guards, things like opening clinics up until to the late hours of the evening, the stabilization of the GMPD, expropriation of buildings around Alexandra to cater for social, residential settlement. These are things that you could have never, realized with a person who would have come from a DA that firstly was, advocated for policies that were not pro-poor but also that had a very strong element of white supremacy. From the start, there was always a resistance within the DA, a difficult relationship within the DA with the white caucus, so people who mobilized themselves around the interests, views and ideas and the person of Helen Zille. And to that extent, of all the people, Trolley, the ones in Tshwane, in Johannesburg, it was a working relationship that was working for the people.
Yes.
And that's why we have expressed a deep disappointment of a person like that. He was a pleasant disappointment because, as you know, we were never really much in favor of him. And then he was the most understanding, the most consultative, the most you could win on programmatic, efficient questions that were saving money to the city but servicing the poor.
Yeah.
Of all the mayors that were there, he was the one that actually understood coalition government.
The ANC's regional secretary in Johannesburg, Dada Morero, has described Mashaba's resignation as unsurprising.
Morero says talks on choosing a new mayor are expected to begin tomorrow.
We're not surprised as the ANC. We had expected that he will never finish his term because governing in local government is not as easy as people think. And being a mayor of a city like Johannesburg, it's not so easy. He has, on a number of occasions, whispered to some of our caucus leaders that this thing of running local government is not child's play, and in fact, it's not his thing. So we're not surprised, and we are also convinced that, look, more than any other thing, this thing is based on the issues that the ANC have raised, that the financial position of the city, it's in dire constraint and it's about to collapse. And for him to suggest that they're in a good cash balance, it's not true. And we still maintain as the ANC that he is misleading the residents of Johannesburg. And at some point, the reports of National Treasury will prove that the ANC has been correct all along to say the finances of the city are in dire constraint.
Meanwhile, locals in Johannesburg have reacted with shock to the resignation of the Johannesburg Metro Mayor Herman Mashaba, with some saying it was long coming.
I'm so disappointed, and if he went off, it's okay.
I'm very, very happy that he resigned. It's about time.
It's annoying because they come in and misuse money and then they resign.
They knew what he was doing. So I hope we find somebody who's going to be good as he was.
If I voted, I would vote for Jehovah, not for a man. Because after Herman Mashaba, there'll be another one, and they'll all do the same thing.
All leaders should act in an accountable way. It's just like a father that is heading a house, a father deciding to disappear in the early hours of the morning without indicating to the wife and the children that leaves much to be desired.
Why do you just wake up and leave when there's so many issues going on? You know, there's so many things that need to be sorted out. So what's the point of leaving? Now someone else has to come in, fix his mess, basically. And that's not fair.
They're thinking for themselves, they're not thinking about us.
It's fine, he must resign because he didn't do anything for us.
He used to give us pamphlets and telling us to vote so that we can get jobs and bring change to our country. We voted and now he is resigning.
All right, so perhaps the biggest political story of the day, and one that will run for at least a few days, as the DA's Federal Council is meeting as we speak, we believe, to discuss what might be the situation going forward. Well, for more on this, we're now joined in studio by political commentator Michael O'Donovan. Michael, thanks very much indeed for joining us. The last time we spoke, actually, the DA was campaigning and releasing its manifesto. A lot has happened since then. When do you think we got the first clue that an event like this might happen?
I think the first clue really came from the results of that election, where the upward trajectory of the DA was reversed. Something had gone wrong, and it was inevitable that there would be a great deal of introspection. It was necessary to look at to say, why did that upward climb decline? what went wrong. And it is a long term, there would have to be change within the DA.
All right, so a lot of fingers being pointed to the party leader, Mmusi Maimane. How did we get it to a point where the Johannesburg mayor decided enough is enough?
Well, that's one of the big surprises for me, that when Mashaba actually decided to step down. She has an individual that's presented himself, stepped forward to say, I'm going to save Johannesburg. And for him to walk away and say, basically, there is no hope, we end up in a precarious situation. And the unfortunate part about this is that he has stepped down at an early stage. None of his fears have yet been realized. I think he feels aggrieved about the lack of support for the coalition system, of which he was a master, which he did very well. And to a large extent, that coalition had already fallen through. The EFF had a couple of months ago said, we need to have the mayorship of Tshwane. And if you don't give that to us, we will no longer cooperate. That was the end of that coalition way back 4 months ago. So ever since then, Mashaba's situation became more and more precarious.
He says that essentially it's a foregone conclusion that this is the end in terms of perhaps the DA trying to control and run things in Johannesburg.
I think Herman Mashaba is perfectly right that coalitions are the only way forward for a party like the DA and for the smaller parties. They're not going to win an outright majority anytime soon. And if they're not going to enter coalition politics, they're purely in opposition. And they then have to step back and let the ANC continue as it had been.
So talk to me a little bit about the speech that Mmusi Maimane gave afterwards. I was watching this and I got a sense that he says, Herman, I'm with you. My hands are a little bit tied, but I'm with you. You're my hero. And he's almost, if one picks a side in the party, it's almost as if Mmusi Maimane has picked his side and now he's starting to step forward and speak his truth.
Yes, I think that certainly appears to be the case, but also it would also indicate that Maimane thinks that he may be next in line for removal. So if I go back to the poor performance of the DA in the last election, it was under Maimane's leadership that decline set in. Essentially what happened that the DA thoroughly entered the realm of identity politics. It realized the future lay with the black vote, and it was caught in the black vote. When it moved into the realm of identity politics, it really moved away from what others refer to as the liberal values. And that gamble did not pay off for the DA.
So is it Mmusi to blame, or is it party? I mean, when I think about the contenders for the federal chairperson position, for white people, it just, do you know what I mean? When you're outside looking in, it just doesn't seem to make sense.
It doesn't resonate with the vast majority of South Africans. And the DA, and also kind of a whole bunch of old white people, juxtaposed about the vibrant young black leadership. But the whole problem with this narrative is that it's white versus black. The DA is never going to win on the identity politics realm. It can, in that sense, it cannot out-black the ANC or the EFF. It has to get its votes from another form of identity.
What could that be?
That could be, people have many identities. You can identify yourself as a firm Democrat, as a professional, as...
Is this not what they're saying, a party for all? Is that not enough of an identity?
Yes, it is, but on what basis? Are you going to be on the basis of the fact that we as a party are the ones that are against land expropriation without compensation? The DA did not step forward and claim that territory. in particular Herman Mashaba, was proclaiming quite proudly that the DA would be the first party to expropriate land without compensation.
So what's really happening inside the DA right now? Is it clear now that there are two factions, one that might be an old guard and a new guard that's trying to change the face of the party, and that there's this clash? Is this what's really happening? What's your take on what's actually fundamentally going on?
Well, fundamentally what's happening in South Africa is precisely what happened in Britain, in the United States, where you had a resort to populist values, to populist rhetoric. And that happened to the DA as it has happened to other parties. The problem with that is really without substance. So what distinguishes the DA from the ANC? Now, if you ask people what the difference of the economic policies are, 10 years ago they would have brandished the DA as the free marketeers, the ANC as more centrist. That difference has disappeared. So what is there to compel people to support the DA rather than any other party?
Could there be a split in the offing here? Because, it seems as if all the ingredients of a breakaway party might be there.
I think that's what appears to be the case. But if you take Herman Mashaba as an example, the Crown Prince has gone into exile. He's not going to be put in a position where he can really achieve what he aspired to achieve. If he splits, and with or without my money forms another party, it will inevitably be a smaller party with far less influence. So really a split is going to be fundamentally detrimental to South African coalition politics.
So everyone's watching now Mmusi Maimane versus Helen Zille. I mean, that's the way it's kind of been put out there. She says that she can't control what happens in the party leadership. Her job is operations in a sense. But it can't really be the case. And I just wonder, how do you see that playing out, this clash of wills, if we can even use that expression?
I think the game is going to change fundamentally from this point forward. That narrative is going to disappear. It is now going to be a battle for survival. The DA is going to be hard-pressed to recover from this. As I indicated, the Crown Prince, the person that they had given the economic heartland to, has decided, I can't do this. Now, the reputation of the DA under whoever's leadership is severely tarnished. And people will be looking for alternatives.
So we have the FedCo meeting this afternoon to try and discuss what the impact might be. Might we be able to learn a lesson from Nelson Mandela Bay of what lies ahead for Johannesburg?
Yes. Well, I shall say, unfortunately, in the last local government elections, it was quite clear that how coalitions were managed were going to determine how well cities were governed and how stable they were. The track record has not been that good, with Nelson Mandela Bay falling it must be a year ago. EFF effectively leading the implicit agreement on Tshwane and Johannesburg several months ago. It seems to me that the parties have not really learnt how to cooperate, how to be in a coalition. In my opinion, the EFF requiring that Tshwane mayorship fall to them was substantially overplaying their hand. And by the DA not concurring to that, everything came tumbling down.
Where does the ANC play out in this? Is this a gain for them? Is this a win for them?
I think that they're probably gleeful at this stage, but it's their victory in that sense is not assured. What people of Johannesburg have to be concerned about is the inability to appoint a new mayor. that we have an impasse. If you recall, the EFF said they will not support either the DA nor the ANC.
But they will vote on a project-by-project
they'll
basis.
Vote, and the new project is who's going to be the mayor. And they're not shy. I wouldn't be surprised if they asked that the next mayor of Johannesburg be a EFF person. And is the ANC willing to pay that price to regain control?
All right, so have we lost Herman Mashaba to politics after this, do you think? Or
yes, without doubt, because people are being reminded of how he stepped in with a grand vision, how that he was going to save Johannesburg, essentially from the ANC, from the corruption that was endemic in the council. And for him to walk away at this stage, inflicting incredible damage on his political party, I think it's going to make him untouchable. Nobody will want to touch him. Is he a reliable partner?
Helen Zille's new in her job. She's going to have to find a way to try and bring people together. But now she has to try and manage this perception that's been put out there by Herman Mashaba that her victory meant that the right-wing portion of the party had won. She's denying it. She says, I've got struggle credentials. How can this be true?
Yes, and it's all a question of what you mean by right-wing credentials. Now, from her perspective, the right-wing credentials are liberal values. Free marketism, the sanctity of property, the rule of law. And on the other side, what she does, she de-emphasizes the role of race. And hence we have this whole discussion about whether or not you can talk about poverty without talking about race, which seems to get Herman Mashaba's back up a bit. So those values that Helen is espousing are not really right-wing values. They are traditional liberal values. The question really is whether or not, or how strong a role identity or race-based politics plays in it. And I think Herman Mashaba, Mmusi Maimane have, threw their cards behind identity politics in the last election.
It's incredible that James Self had been in this position for 19 years. And I just wonder if that doesn't represent some of the issues that the party has, that actually in its leadership, whilst you have a few young Turks that are coming through, the Mmusi Maimane, that maybe they don't quite understand how much the country has changed and that they're not positioned themselves for the order of the day.
And there's another dimension to this that has beset the ANC and besets the DA, where the political party is all-powerful. The political party dominates the narrative, sets the agendas. That is not the nature of democracy in its true sense. Democracy, if you think of democracy at a city council level, is a contestation between interests, between ward councillors, PR councillors, not the subjugation of all councillors to the mayor or to the political party. And what we've seen under the DA's stewardship in the last period is that even ward councillors, who are meant to represent the ward, the electorate, represent the party. So we've lost that dynamism that is central to a healthy democracy. And we end up with the elephants trampling and the grass being trod.
All right, Michael, that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks very much indeed. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for your insights.
Okay.
All right, we'll leave that there for the time being, but it will continue to be a talking point, certainly, and we'll give you more during the course of the programme.